welcome, dear friends, to this fifth session of the 2022 Turner Winter Series, now in its 17th year and now being held in the spacious comfort of the Robert H. Jackson Center here in Jamestown. I'm Maureen Raveno. Whether you are here in person, watching through live streaming, or if you are joining us later via YouTube, it is my great pleasure to begin our time together with a brief introduction of our wonderful guest, P.J. Wendel, who will engage in conversation with our perennial host and the founder of this series, Jamestown's and the Jackson Center's own Greg Peterson. So let me first say a few words to begin to get to know and appreciate our special guest. Paul Michael Wendel Jr., PJ, is the Chautauqua County Executive. PJ grew up in Chautauqua County, became part of a national champion wrestling team, has been a 33-year volunteer fireman and certified EMT, and is an inductee into the SUNY Brockport Hall of Fame. He has been a teacher in Chautauqua County schools, having earned a Master of Education, summa cum laude, from Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania. He has served in local county government as a county legislator, moving to majority leader in 2016, and then to chair of the legislature in 2018 and again in 2019. PJ became the first county executive to be appointed by the county legislature when he was selected to fill part of the remaining term of the former county executive. He was subsequently elected into the county executive position in November of 2020 and re-elected in November 2021. Recently appointed to the County Executives of America Board of Directors, PJ is also an active member of the Chautauqua County Republican Party. PJ's conversation with Greg will focus upon, among other things, the state of Chautauqua County. And so, with this wonderful background and with great appreciation, we now welcome PJ Wendel to this evening's conversation.
PJ, welcome.
Thank you.
I am wearing a mask, which you mandated since about March of 2020, and tonight I am taking it off because you no longer have mandated that, and I feel good.
So do I. Very good about it, really.
So, you're the county executive in March of 2020. All of a sudden, the news starts to break regarding something called the Delta variant. And how did you first kind of get that information and kind of your shower moment when you say, oh, what is this?
Well, we hear rumblings out east, of course. Westchester County was the epicenter of everything. And, we kind of listened attentively, paid close attention, really started hearing this about mid-February, almost this time 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And met with Christine Schuyler, and it was almost too real to believe, that really could this be that crippling? We listened to Westchester County shutting down schools, and it was just kind of mind-boggling. And so it was I believe, Friday the 13th, of all things, we had a Zoom meeting. And I like to do things in person. And I said, we're going to meet on Sunday the 15th, and we're going to, have some serious discussion. At that point, do we issue a state of emergency? Where are we? So it was really in that 48-hour period, everything kind of hit us right in the face with, closing down schools and issuing a state of emergency and not really knowing if we were going to lock things down, but realizing we really had to make some serious decisions. Initial group was 25 plus. We realized that leadership doesn't work with that many people, so we reduced it to 6, 7 of us. Very effective group, but then we had subgroups, communications people, logistics people. So it was just wild, really. I mean, when you think about, 2 months in, I was thinking of the economy and my first budget and the lake we first talked about and what were the problems facing Chautauqua County at that point, in January. And boy, did it change between then and March. So wild was really the only word I can describe it.
So we were talking February 13th time period, 2020. Word just keeps rolling in like a tsunami, and I suspect you don't even know how to react because there's no precedent.
There isn't. There were no books. There was no, in case of emergency, break glass. Who do we talk to? One of the things that Steve Aquario, who I've become great friends with, who was the executive director at Nysac, and he brought us together on calls every night So when I would get home from work, and the reason I was, I would say I was going to work was I could focus. I could be in my office. I was surrounded by the office I was holding. Not that I didn't have, ample place at home to do it, but I just always felt that as the executive I needed to be, it was my Oval Office, if you will. So that's where we were working. Our groups were all there. Our department heads were there. So that's where we'd meet. But Steve had great meetings. Every night at 7 o'clock, I'd come home, I'd go upstairs into a bedroom and just listen. And he started with, his inspirational quotes and how we were all in this together. But that was the piece. Several account executives have been in there for 12, one even 16 years. But on that day, December 15th, as I call our day of infamy, and not shortly thereafter, the entire state, we were equal. There was no one who had any experience. Mark Poloncarz had 7 feet of snow a year or two before, but he never had COVID, and nobody did. We were all in the same boat. So I think that was, it was a great equalizer, but it really showed leadership skills. It showed how you, can focus on the task, and a lot of it was reliability on the people around you. You really had to put faith in the people in my group, my COVID team, and their abilities. And for the first time, I've always said, the buck stops with me as executive. My name's on the top of the letterhead. But at the end of the day, you've got to have faith in everybody you work with. And I think that was the most unique part of this, is really, as anxious as you wanted to be to hold the reins, you really had to let go and say, I have faith in the people that are doing the job, and have faith the system was going to work and things were going to progress the way they did.
Well, talk about progression. I mean, this is not like the game plan was unfolded and the whistle was blown. It progressed, and you had to alter and change, and at various points even pull back, start again. How did all that happen with and the public relations that went with it?
It was a challenge. And we didn't, I don't want to say we didn't take a hard stance, but we didn't jump at things. We heard the guidance came out from the governor, and I guess the best part of their lack of understanding or their lack of leadership in certain times, they would make an announcement and it would take 3 to 4 days or a week until we got guidance. So at that point, we listened to what they said, then Governor Cuomo, and then we could take a step back and say, okay, how would we do that here? What are the opportunities? And then we'd start planning and discussing, and we were meeting every day. So it wasn't like, we had a couple of days to think about it, but we would meet every day and discuss different options. We'd discuss things. And one of the things that has been most obvious and pointed out to us is we don't have a public information officer. We don't have one person in Chautauqua County that does all of our press releases. So it was the Department of Health, it was my office, and we were working 6 and 7 days a week. And you don't have a professional doing it, you have multiple people doing it. So it was a challenge. Our group became very well versed at press releases and press conferences and Zooming and media streaming, live streaming. So it was unique about getting the information out. And one of the things that I was very adamant about was getting out the truth. Don't embellish, don't change. Print what's there whether you like it or not, because if you try to waver, and especially at this point when it was so early, you don't want to be on the other end of that discussion when what you put out is wrong information. So,
how did you sort out your jurisdiction? The governor's announcing a variety of requirements, mandates, thou shalt do, and then at some point says, maybe we'll leave it to the local municipalities to then identify how it's going to be implemented. That was a process, it seems to me, that was morphed over time. Is that accurate?
yes, it was. It was, at first, this is what's happening, this is what you're going to do, but people would call us, the governor would have a press conference, and our phones would be blown up. How are we going to do it? What are we going to do? Residents and emails and flex. It's like, we don't know. What do you mean you don't know? We don't have guidance. I'm telling you, we don't know. And then they said, well, it's up to you. But that really didn't happen until later, because my voice, and anybody who knows me, I'm vocal, and it's like, I'm shutting down, but I don't have this problem. I don't have 300 people a day testing positive for COVID. It took us a week to get our first case. And then we could trace and track everything. So it wasn't like we had hundreds of people. Erie County, they wanted to shut down the borders. I wanted people to, how dare we open the institution? People are coming in from New York City in the droves and the Amish. There was so much misinformation. So it was a matter of trying to quell all of that. And I did take, at that time, some guidance from then Lieutenant Governor Hochul and said, somebody brought a question up of Pennsylvania being on the list. And that morning when she talked to me, Pennsylvania was not considered a no-travel area. So she said, do you see anything in the newspapers about this? Is it headlines? And I said, no, it's an overzealous reporter from Channel 2. 2 hours later, it was changed. But anyway, the point was, I told people, do you see this in the newspapers? Do you see it covering? This is one person's opinion, and then and it wasn't even our papers, it was an online news reporter that, would show pictures of people. Well, it was pictures of people enjoying Chautauqua Institution as a park. But when you see people coming in and out, then it just plays into the narrative. So a lot of it was having to catch up on the false news. That was the hardest part. It was kind of go with the flow. But, I was kind of saying, that's great, I'm following the rules, but I don't have this problem in Chautauqua County. Oh, and mind you, we border Pennsylvania on two sides, and we're 2 hours from Ohio, so realize when you shut this state and my county down, people are gone. They're going to go buy things, and they're going to go out to dinner in Pennsylvania. They're going to go to Erie to shop, and they're going to go to Cleveland. We were losing our economy, and I said that time and time again, and Steve Aquario finally realized, I shouldn't say finally realized, but always understood the uniqueness of Chautauqua County. And I often tell people we are uniquely qualified because we are the only county in New York State that borders Pennsylvania on two sides. And our economy was so close to major centers where our people could leave. So it was unique.
You may have mentioned Steve, you mentioned Steve, but what's his role?
He's the executive director of Nysac.
Okay.
So whether you're, of course, I always tell unique, in New York State, we can't be normal with anything. So there's three forms of government. We have county executives, or a charter system. You have a board of supervisors, which is what we were prior to 1975, I believe it was. And then you have the county legislatures. So one state, 62 counties, and it's always like the trick question. How many county executives do you think there are in New York State? Well, there's 62. There's only 18 of us. So Steve has to corral us all together, county executives, county legislatures, boards, chairmen of the board of supervisors. So he had a variety of different people to address, but the excitement that he had and the passion he had and I just can't describe, one, the friendship that we created with all the executives and leaders across the state, but just his leadership and what he did to bring us all together. Because at the end of the day, no one had been here before. We were definitely in uncharted waters, and his leadership really helped everybody out, especially mine, because being the new guy, 2 months into my office, 3 months into my office, this is what hit us. And it was one of the interviews or one of the discussions we had. Executives were there, and there was somebody who'd been an executive for a little over a year, and he was talking about how challenging it was. And Steve texted me, "You going to open up? You going to talk? You going to tell him?" Because they got excited. This guy was complaining about being there a year, and he's like, "You've been there 3 months." So I was the new guy, but we all were in the same boat, and we really worked well together and shared a lot. I think because of that, I created a lot of some really good friendships and some great friendships throughout, and really opened my eyes to everybody else. Not just, yes, we focus on our county, but listening to what's happening elsewhere in the state helps out as well.
Last year, 2021, sitting in your seat, we had Michael Hill, and the sole topic of the conversation was 2020 at Chautauqua. How did he learn? What was he in the middle of doing, similar to what we started here? And of course, they ultimately chose not to have a season, a difficult decision. But I suspect they did that in consult with the state and the county. And so can you give us some insight as to kind of the early conversations with Michael Hill saying, whoa, talk about being relatively new. He's like, holy cow.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, Michael's become a great friend of mine. We often, on my birthday, he beats my mom to the punch. So Michael usually texts me happy birthday before my mom does, by a minute or two, but he does. But he's got a great perspective. And again, we're all in this together. a lot of conversations, asking, what do you think? And I'm, I'm more of the glass is half full empty, type of guy. I think you can do it, Michael. I really do. I think you can. Yeah, but and mine at that point was, why not? I've told people I'm a quoter, and I like, Robert Kennedy's, people look at things and say why. I look at them and say why not. Well, it's the same thing. Well, why can't you run it? Why can't you have the season? It'll be, a change, go on the fly. The right decision was made, obviously, but, I would have liked to have seen somebody be that. Even the rodeo, the comparison was, yeah, but you would have been the only rodeo in the country that year because everyone was closing down. But I think they made the right choice. But again, it was in concert with the state, with our county, and Michael was always, in fact, one of our initial groups, because the institution was such a big part of our county, he was on and part of our initial team. As we started to kind of dwindle the team down to more effective, Michael was always consulted, always brought up to speed on things, but didn't necessarily have to be there every day. But we were in concert with them all the time and talking. But it was a challenge. I mean, you're talking an institution that's been there for 145 years. The first time ever they didn't have a season. I think that was, history was made in so many different ways. But I think when you look at the way they rebounded last year, and just really more excited for this year, is getting to see what could come. And there's just, and really did it open the door for the institution to know they could do things online and Zoom and really capture more of an audience. I know they were excited about last year, the response they got from the residents and who was coming and who wasn't coming, and how people, were attracted to the institution via online. They're really excited this year. Just people say, wow, if I could be there in person, I'm there. So they're excited about the opportunity to really explode with, more ticket sales, more people staying on the grounds. But, you can't, the other interesting piece is when you talk to people, how do you describe the institution? It's community that incites intellect, and it's hard to describe when you talk to people, but they are an integral part of our county and what goes on.
There was the Chautauqua experience 2020, but they certainly weren't alone because the whole county was sort of shut down, including baseball. And that to keep the morale up when all of a sudden everybody is sort of forced to hunker in, get their food out the back window, and it was a whole different paradigm. How did you feel you had to, as the county executive, kind of react to all that? I mean, how?
Well, I think one is, we have a unique outdoor experience. So when they realized we could start to do things that, initially COVID wasn't going to be, you're not going to catch it from a table. You're not going to catch it from a surface. Still kind of dicey then. It was still unclear, but we could be outside. Well, let's get outside. One of the things I pushed for was, if we're thinking of opening our restaurants, go back to the phased openings. So phase one, we could, this is where we'd be. What about opening up our outdoor restaurants? What if we open up the outdoor restaurants to practice for the indoor transition? That'd be a great thing. It happened. If you go, you see all these little pop-ups, people eating on the sidewalks. I was in Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, and they want to close the street down because moving outside is what was able to keep their business going. They want to do that permanently now. So there were a lot of things that we looked at. My role was, how do we keep people excited? How do we get people to not be a victim of cabin fever? I was encouraging people to get out, look at Chautauqua County, get out and enjoy our trails, get out and enjoy the outdoors, get exercise, stay active, stay fit. Always trying to be positive, to look at all the things we can do. And I think a lot of people realized there were a lot of things you could do in Chautauqua County that may not even cost any money. Places, other areas we can go. Supporting places like Panama Rocks, our state parks, other areas. It was just, but really trying to be that positive voice of getting out, and again, it's not that bad. It was bad, but it wasn't that bad. And I think the most unique thing about people that don't realize, those initial lockdowns, shutdowns, if you will, I don't call them lockdown because we weren't, with an armed guard, but it was only 8 weeks long. The initial shutdown from March, it started in April. And by June 30th of that first year, we were in phase 4. We were fully open. So when you look at that initial block of that first wave, we managed it well. It's just the ensuing 18 months, it's really been, stifling everybody. So it was a challenge. But that first initial shutdown and stuff was only 8 weeks long, and there was a lot learned in that 8 weeks. But I think what's really been challenging is the remainder, from that June 30th of 2020 until now, when we start. I mean, you think in schools, this is the first month. Tomorrow morning will be the first day. March 2nd will be the first day kids will go back to school without a mask on.
Are you planning to be someplace for?
I thought about it. I do take my son to school every day, so I thought about, maybe sticking around and just watching kids come in. Different people take it different ways. I think the most disappointing thing that I've seen is this, whether it's masking, vaccinations, this has divided our country, well beyond Chautauqua County. But there's a divide. I think today's paper was, the county executive rushes to get them. I was one of the last county representatives to put out a press release stating we weren't going to have an additional mandate. So it's a perception that people have. Am I excited? Yeah, I'm excited. You think about it, as a teacher, there are kids that have never been to school without a mask on. Mm-hmm. So I think when we get back, and some startling news I heard today from superintendents that's been happening in school. So we need to get our kids back. We need to get them to see the faces. That'll be the first time some of these kids have seen their teachers' faces since they've been in school. So really excited for what tomorrow brings. But talking to superintendents today, they didn't need my encouragement, but just stay the course. Feel confident in your decision.
Yeah.
So I think but it'll be interesting. I'm really excited to see what tomorrow brings.
So during this time period, you talked about the 8 weeks which were really shut down. And then, of course, that had a really terrific economic impact. And I know in your state of the state, or state of the county address in 2021, you said something to the extent that you stated that the comeback would be greater than the setback. How did you feel that was going to be an accurate statement?
Optimism. I guess to me, people ask me that, or when you look at the county executive, should I be the one to say, oh, this is horrible? Do we want to talk about the negativity in the county? We probably could. Anybody can. I'm sure you could find things to be upset about. But if you're the county, shouldn't you be the one, really the biggest cheerleader? Shouldn't you be the one saying that we're going to do this? And I think as a group, when I looked at the decisions we made, I wasn't going to go back and say, well, I'm not sure how it's going to work out. No, it's going to work out great. We made the best decisions with the best information we had. So I was confident. And even so criticized, again, by media that, you need to listen to Chuck Nazaro. Chuck is a longtime financier and a well-respected. He's a great friend of mine. And I thought, maybe Chuck does know more than I do, But the underlying part was internet sales. We do have a tax on internet sales, and because everybody was locked down, boom, there goes internet sales. So in a sense, you didn't have to leave your house to generate sales tax revenue in Chautauqua County, which was a big plus. And then when things started to open up, it was like the doors are open. People were going out to restaurants and buying and so forth. So I felt confident that we would bounce back. We have a very vibrant economy here in the county. So I was really confident. I really felt that we were going to bounce back. It was a great catchphrase and really excited to see where we ended up. But what's really ironic with all of that, and I'll save it for the state of the county when we talk about it, but there's some unique things that haven't changed since 1985. I'll go that far. But getting back to it, I was really excited. I felt confident that the people wanted to get out. We did have extra money. People wanted to spend money. They wanted to stay here in the county. People wanted to come to the county. So I was really excited that we would bounce back and to prove to people that we are Chautauqua County and we will beat this thing. And we did.
Many of the businesses and folks on the camera know that I'm involved as attorney with the County of Chautauqua Industrial Development Agency, and I know you work very closely, glove in hand, with everybody at the IDA. Did you get there was the businesses, the manufacturers, the grocery stores, the folks who lost that in-person clientele really got hit very hard. A lot of things happened during that time period, from funding and otherwise. You want to comment a little bit and give a little kind of overview of the response, if you will, to the businesses which were laboring?
Yeah, it was both sides. You know, I heard people were really excited, and we started to open things. Well, let's go back. I could talk most recently about the mask mandate. You know, we stated as a county we were not going to enforce the mask mandate. And by that, I was saying I wasn't stopping people from wearing a mask. I wasn't going to tell somebody not to wear a mask. I didn't feel it was appropriate to penalize those same businesses once again for allowing somebody to come in, and because it was their prerogative to take the mask off, because we're going to have police officers there to enforce this, you know, in a you know, basically a state of, I don't know how do you, military state, I guess you would call it. So I didn't feel that was appropriate, but some people excited, great, you're not doing it. Other people saying, because of you, people aren't coming here. They're saying, so it was a challenge. But, you know, looking back, I made the decision, I stuck with it. Right or wrong, I wasn't going to go back and waffle on the decision I made. It's disappointing to see businesses that aren't able to reopen. I used to love going to Gialli's. You know, they weren't able to reopen. Other smaller businesses not able to succeed through it. Hopes are, you know, they can rebound and come back. But it was a challenge. You know, we're listening to manufacturers. We're listening to everybody. You know, we had one of our biggest outbreaks in a manufacturer in the north part of the county. That was a great amount of teamwork, amount of coordination from multiple agencies. Really, as contradictory as, you know, it was to the success, it was our first test as a county of how do we support our businesses? How do we make sure that our businesses are safe? And we proved we could do that. We could protect the businesses. We can protect our residents. It's hard, and for those who weren't able to come back through all that, that's a disappointment, because as you know, that's another business we're not going to have here in the county. So, you know, I take those personally because I feel it's somewhat of a failure on my part. But at the end of the day, you know, we've got to look at decisions and, you know, stand by. But, you know, I think each business had to take a good look at themselves. Some businesses really came out of this much better. I know there's one business in the north that said, you know, I reached out, I had a great accountant. The accountant showed me how to navigate the PPP, gained federal funding. They made additions. They opened up, you know, they made renovations to the building in the midst of the shutdown. And they came out of it on the other side much better. So I think that's the only downside of it, is I know the IDA worked very hard at working with the small businesses. They created, I mean, we started that initial loan fund of, you know, $250,000. That system right there, that emergency loan, was mirrored across the state. You know, I was excited. I'm excited to tell everybody about what we do here. When I said it to Steve Aquario, boom, my phone starts blowing up with executives. What do you do? Explain it to me. I said, you know, we started the Partnership for Economic Growth just prior to my taking office. And the partnership was this. Everybody kept saying, well, you have to have an economic engine. You have to have an engine that brings everybody together. It's going to understand the economic recovery. And I'm thinking, and I was sitting with then my assistant, Danny Heitzenreiter, who's now our president of the chamber. And he said, what about the partnership? So I said, this is what we have, this public-private partnership. And boom, that took off across the state. Not to the exact replication of what we had, but we started a lot here in Chautauqua County that others, you know, took notice of, which I think is great. It wasn't my decision, it wasn't my idea, but I would share that with everybody and say, hey, look what we're doing. That's a good idea. And then morph it into what they want. But we were always there to support our businesses, always there to support their decisions. And there were some very tough decisions. And, you know, I stood by decisions, and I stand by my decisions. And I know not everybody fared well. And for that, you know, we're truly sorry. But, you know, my hopes are that people are going to rebound, especially GLAs.
And as you catchphrase, hoping or suggesting that the comeback would be greater than our setback, reading from your recent State of the County address tonight, I'm proud to announce that our comeback has indeed been far greater than our setback. And you talked about 2020, and you talked about recorded an unemployment rate of 3.5%, the lowest rate since 1990. And I'll just read on, because it's most people probably didn't pay a lot of attention, but that through the IDA, the project's loans and grants resulted in $164 million being invested in Chautauqua County, with a projected 314 new permanent jobs, while retaining more than 1,750 current jobs. And then you listed some of the ideas. By the way, Mark Geis asked me if I could plug that in.
That's fine. That's fine. Mark's,
But I find, and this is just a personal note, that you attend our board meetings, you participate and are a significant listener to what goes on in the board meeting, but you're interested. And I applaud you for that, and that's not lost on those who are following this.
Well, thank you. You know, again, I think one of the things I'm hearing, and maybe, I don't say criticized for, is being too much, being involved in a lot. But the IDA is something that, really important when you think about, it's the Industrial Development Agency, it's building industry here in Chautauqua County. What I think is lost on a lot of people is, we need to bring in business, you need to bring in, we tried getting, Amazon, that was, and we learned why we didn't land that big project, and Mark and those guys and the IDA are really making strides to make sure that doesn't happen again. But, the key to that is the 1,700 jobs we were able to retain. People don't realize the number of businesses that were on their way of saying, we're done. Trucklight, for example. We did lose Trucklight amidst the pandemic. But if you talk to anybody, that's not the first time Trucklight talked about leaving the area. That was something that, was in the process long before I became county executive, and probably, I would say, even back before Greg Edwards. That Trucklight was in a unique position. But many other businesses that have left, I don't want to discredit what they did, but there were decisions made business-wise that did not pan out well for them. And unfortunately, the pandemic exacerbated those decisions that were, maybe made poorly. So, you look at the IDA and you look at their dedication, and I will say, first of all, they don't walk on water. They make mistakes. They've invested where maybe they shouldn't have, or things have happened not the way they wanted to. And as you know, it's not for passion and desire and work. I mean, that group works tirelessly. But what was most unique was after the shutdown initially started, I reached out to Mark and Rich, what a great duo, as you know. But I said, what's been happening? Oh, let me tell you what's been happening. And it was like, they gave me a laundry list of things and businesses, and I'm thinking, wow. So that's what gave me the confidence to say our comeback would be greater than our setback. When you listen to the cakes that are in the oven, there's still cakes in the oven right now that we're waiting until they're done before they can announce them. So what you've heard in that State of the County is a small piece of what's actually, as you know, what's going on. And there's businesses waiting to start, things waiting to happen. But, you don't say anything, the proverbial, till the fat lady sings, until the ink is dried, until the cake is done. And so it's with that excitement of what the IDA has been doing that's really, kind of keeping me going, and that to knowing and being having that confidence in making that statement. But the IDA just does so many great things. Again, criticized for decisions made in the past. What I've learned, and I've said this more in the last couple of weeks as things have kind of rolled out. We didn't create these problems, but we have to solve them. And prior to Mark being the president and the CEO of the IDA, there were decisions made trying to correct them, trying to overcome them right now. So again, moving forward, we're always watching, always waiting for that next big Cummins engine to come in, listening to mistakes that have been made in the past, possibly, or listening to people saying, well, this is why we didn't come, and correcting it. So I think we've got a great team, and that's expanding. Mark and Rich and everybody at the IDA, the planning department, we brought them under one umbrella. They were separated for a while. Planning and economic development are back in the same house, if you will. So really excited about, the decisions we've made and how we're moving forward. And there's a lot of excitement in the county, and there's a lot, right now, Immunity Bio, that project is amazing. And just think, we talk about the whole vaccine thing right now. It's just a tumultuous statement. But let's look at the potential of Dr. Soon Shung coming in. He said, I'm ready to airlift my equipment in to get started as soon as I can. What person's ready to airlift their equipment in to start their business? But vaccines for tuberculosis, for HIV. HIV was let's say in the 80s, it was almost a death sentence, to people. But if you can have a vaccine for that and COVID-19, but more importantly, cancer. And I loved his opening statement when he presented to the IDA. We have found the key to unlock your immune system. Wow, what a great, it's almost something you would see in a movie as far as like an opening, thriller. We found the way to unlock your immune system, which is great. And if that could happen right here in Chautauqua County, boy, baseball tarp started here. Just think of what could happen if we had the vaccine. With the vaccine, I don't know. Tarp skunks, vaccine skunks probably aren't going to be left. But I mean, if you think about that, that's where we are. You know, where can we be? What will we be known for? We've been first in so many things. I'm just can't wait to see what happens with this new. But again, the facility was there, and people criticize. If you build it, they will come. They laugh when you say that. But Athenex built that building. Immunity Bio bought it because it was there. And potentially, Athenex was on that precipice of maybe not staying or maybe not going in the direction they wanted to. So a great economic swing for us, and really excited. But, you know, that's the best part. And I take a lot of pride in the last 2 years of, like I said, my name's at the top of that letterhead. And when people look at Chautauqua County, it's not always me, understandably, but if there's business development, well, let me tell you what, you know darn well if a business doesn't come here or leaves here under my watch, I will definitely be criticized for it. So I want to be the one to loud and be excited about the businesses who do come.
Do you realize how many times you've been sworn in the last 3 years?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah.
How many times have been sworn at in the last 3 years? But no, you know, I think that's the most interesting part. I left the county Republican committee meeting last night, and I said for the first time in the last 3 years, I don't have to circulate a petition for myself. Yeah, it's unique, you know. Yeah, as my wife's here and my kids, this isn't. It's not a one-man show. You know, this job encompasses everybody, and for 2 years straight, you know, it's every weekend, every night, and always doing something. And the hardest part, and I will say this, being really open with this, is that, you know, I don't know any other way to be county executive, because within 3 months I was thrown into every day. You know, as my wife could tell you, I would drive to the office just so I could surround myself in the office and kind of get to my workplace. You know, not that I couldn't do it at home. It's just, that's where I felt I had to be. You know, people wanted to see the backdrop that I was in my office. It wasn't the backdrop of my living room, or some people would be on vacation, or, you know, but I guess that, and going back to that statement being sworn in, I just know, you know, being county executive, sometimes 90 miles an hour is coming to an end. So now we focus on slowing down, you know, taking our time and not having to react to, you know, everything that comes at you. You know, it's, like we said, nobody else had a plane crash in the middle of COVID like we did, unfortunately. And we lost 3 people, but still, you know, along with COVID and a wet snowstorm, and you have a plane that crashed, and now you've got to muster, you know, you've got to put on that other hat, and you now have a national, you know, you have a tragedy you've got to take care of. Yeah. We've had 2 continuous storms that have just pulverized Van Buren Bay. You know, the 100-year storm, that group is good for 300 years now. I mean, they've really taken a beating. But that's the other side of this, is the county business still went on. You know, there were those day-to-day things. Unfortunately, in the last, well, it's a little bit more now, but within a 30-day time period, you know, we had 3 fatalities and fires. That's huge. You know, again, with my experience in the fire service, but that's the rest of the job that continues. You know, the crime rate, the opioids, you know, all of that still goes on. So now you just shift focus. You know, COVID, we kind of put that to bed, knowing that now we do have a plan. You know, we do have that book that came out, and they always joke now, Mark Levine, who's another assistant with Nysac, he said, well, now there is a book that we could pull off the shelf. And let's hope we don't ever have to go there again in a long time, but, you know, we're ready.
Now that you've got other distractions and opportunities, one of the things may be leaving your home in Lakewood and going to the Lake Chautauqua, which is the gem, the jewel of Chautauqua County. And we've had Pierre here, we've had others who come to talk about the Chautauqua Lake progress. From your perspective, what is the state of the lake, and what is being done to sort of enhance it?
Well, you know, the state of the lake, we're moving in the right direction. We have a lot of people that are very passionate about the lake, but people, you know, again, by quoting, it's not business, it's not personal, it's business. We've got to leave personal beliefs and ideologies aside and look at that body. It's not a business itself, but that does generate a lot of business in this area. One of the things we've made great strides in was the MOU. It was an MOA under Executive Borrello, and people would say it has no teeth. A lot of criticisms by the lake stakeholders. And we switched to that MOU, and what people don't realize is that MOU and the significance was the return of the Jefferson Project. You know, a 3-lake group backed by IBM, working with RPI, brings and looks at science. And 2 years ago, you could pick up the paper and listen to people argue back and forth of where things are in the lake. My commitment was we weren't doing that. And the lake stakeholders will tell you, I sat down and said, if you want to do that, we're going to sit down and talk about it first. Before you send something to the paper, before you go online and start going after one another, we're going to sit down and air the differences. Mob movie would call it a sit down, But the importance of that was the Jefferson Project is coming back this year. Because unlike the two other lakes we're involved with, Skiddy Atlas and Lake George, we aren't bickering in public. We aren't fighting. We're working together. It's not a utopia. We still have our issues. But in all, we are moving in the right direction. You've got to remember, the one thing, whether it's COVID or Chautauqua Lake, we are trying to take on Mother Nature, and in some ways trying to beat her, and she laughs at us every time it happens. That lake is a eutrophic lake. It's naturally moving. Ironically, in the Post-Journal, it was about 1898. Again, I think it was called the Evening Post then. If we don't do anything in this lake, in 25 years, it'll be a glorified swamp. It was over 100 years ago, and we're still saying the same thing. But I think now what we've incorporated, we have people here from the Alliance tonight, the science that we're using to deal with the lake is what's most important. All I can tell you is hold on to your socks, because we have an amazing opportunity coming here as long as we still move in the right direction, as long as we can work together and show what we're doing is working, it's being noticed, and just like Sean McDermott has said, have faith in the system, and that's what we're doing. Believe in our system. A lot of people still adversarial, but they do realize that, and what we have to realize is we're working for the same thing, and that's the beautification and the existence and the health of that lake.
Part of the health of the lake is just sewage and sewer. But significant progress can be made. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. So, in fact, we just got off today. I was on a Zoom meeting with a group called Capital Council, and what they do is they help us. They help people navigate. They're going to help us navigate through the infrastructure bill and getting through that. So the uniqueness about that is, it was mentioned in the opening of being a member of the County Executives of America. So Capital Council is exclusively working with members in good standing of the CEA. So it's we're privy to this group, and their lobbyists, their appropriations people from the Hill, and attorneys, that once we get this here. Long story is, yes, we want to expand sewer around the lake. I've never met Raleigh Kidder personally, but I would love to be able to have him put in his editorial, we did it, and to say we have sewer around Chautauqua Lake. Significance, I posted in the State of the County, 700 homes will be affected by Phase 1 and Phase 2. That would take 54 million gallons of wastewater that goes into the aquifer in the lake, the watershed, and puts it in a municipal system where it's treated and put back into the system. That's immense. Potentially, the homes that surround the lake, it's 84 million gallons of wastewater. If we could treat more than half of that, and what they've said, there was a group that is doing this part of the first sewer expansion. They were talking about one of the lakes out east that they completed the sewer around. They said within 3 years, remarkable difference in the quality of the lake. So again, very confident that we can get this done. The money is there, the people are there, the cohesiveness of the groups are there, and I really feel confident in the next couple of years it'll get done. The hardest part of this job is I'm anxious. I don't like to wait. You have to wait. Things take time. We talked about something, I believe, maybe the other day, and they said, well, it'll take about 9 months. 9 months? I want it tomorrow. And it doesn't happen that way. 9 months, and that's about a good time. Like 9 months? We're going to wait 9 months? But it seems like a long time, but when you're in the seat, it goes by pretty fast, and things happen. But the sewer project, it's huge. I mean, you can get that sewer around. I look.
And right now, when you're driving down, from Stowe, I mean, it's happening, and it's going to go from here through Stowe, right?
Yeah, and if you remember, I've been trying I haven't had time to get online and go back in the Post-Journal and find the article, but within the last 10 years, I believe, there was a conceptual drawing of a 6-story hotel right there in Stowe, west of Hogan's Hut. We're ready to go. Oh, you don't have water and sewer? Sorry, we're out. if we could bring in, how that couples with what's happening. So speaking with Greg Edwards and the Gebby Foundation, they had the New York State Planners Association out here, said you have a hidden gem in Jamestown and Chautauqua. You can have the best conference location in the state, right here, with all you have to offer in Jamestown and Chautauqua County. You just don't have a 300, 400 room conference center.
Yeah.
You get water and sewer to Stowe, there's your conference center. And we're not catering into one of the criticisms during my debates. Oh, it's, a dozen millionaires from Chicago or from Cleveland to Pittsburgh. No, it's people that want to come here and develop. And now, and Rob Yates is just ready to go. Sally Carlson started a lot of it in Stowe, down in North Harmony. Rob's ready to pick up the baton and keep running. But yeah, just think of what could happen when we get water and sewer in that area and start to develop that side of the lake. The opportunities are endless. It really is. It's really going to be up to the creation and the risk of those developers. And I don't think so much of a risk. It's, they could be the first and really, lay the groundwork in what I think is going to be a really unique development.
One of the conversations that was talked a little bit about in your state board, it was the airport itself, which, by the way, is named the Robert H. Jackson Airport, just to throw that in. What's your sense of that? If you had to crystal ball that 5 years from now?
Excitement.
Yeah.
You're gonna see something that you won't. I would hope doesn't even resemble what you see there now.
Yeah.
Really excited. So, one of the things in this position is I'm always worried about criticism, and not that I'm worried about it, but I always make sure we're right. One of the last full-time airport managers we've had, strictly airport, not airports and parks or a highway guy running the airport as a facility, but the last true airport manager was Lucille Wright, a female. Our newest, most recent airport manager is Shannon Barnhart, following in the footsteps. But her ideas, she was a planner with the Cleveland Tompkins International Airport, worked with the Burke Airport in downtown Cleveland. So she understands it. She worked in small airports in the Midwest. She's got connections with the FAA. She's got an excitement and exuberance. We had a second candidate that, if you put his excitement with her experience, we're working on ways to bring them both together. We have one, we're really working on bringing the other one. That excitement, that exuberance, I can't imagine what that airport is going to look like in 5 years. But I could tell you what, we're unique like anywhere else. You look at a county this small, doesn't have 2 airports. Uniquely qualified, I tell everybody. I think ABC News said uniquely qualified to bring you the world. We could bring you the world here in Chautauqua County because we're unique. 2 great airports, very long runway, accessible to jet traffic in Dunkirk, but you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the larger facility. It wasn't an essential air service location. Down here, a little bit smaller runway, and we have the infrastructure. So we would take that long runway, the infrastructure, and we'd have one great, amazing airport. We got 2, and they're both amazing airports, and I feel very confident. And not only myself, but our team that interviewed the airport manager, very confident in her abilities, really excited. That's why we chose her. We're not looking to bring somebody in. I said it, do we want to run a facility or do we want to manage an airport? And we chose the legislature, the leadership, and myself to manage the airport. A lot of great excitement, a lot of things she's already doing already. Her first day was the 22nd. She's been going like a two-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. So I'm excited. But she's...
What was that again?
Oh, two-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. That's always on the move. But, it really, she's exciting to listen to. We keep in touch, but really excited at what the airport has. We've got a lot of great people. In fact, I just got an email today. Someone from Luscombe, that there's going to be a teleconference, ask if I can get on because there's going to be some exciting news, big news able to come. So it's like everything, with the IDA, there's just so many things that are just on the edge. We just need that sliver, and it's exploding. And sometimes that sliver doesn't come. So, we're there. We're so close in so many things. So really exciting. The airport's, I'm excited. I've driven a lot of fire trucks. I'm really excited to. I've asked if I could drive the crash truck. Not that I ever want to be there, but I guess, one of those things that, with my experience,
So you're
might be able to get
pulling some weight already, huh?
Maybe. But, our guys up there are just phenomenal. And you think about that, these are men and women that, are plowing, maintaining that airport, and at a moment's notice are now going to be, saving lives. But
Sure.
that's the uniqueness about it, again, with that airport is, we don't have a dedicated full-time fire department like you would in Albany or Buffalo or, Cleveland Hopkins. We have, men and women who work there And then, God forbid something happens, they switch gears and save lives. So hats off to everybody that does that. But the airports are just amazing. I'm really excited about what we have, what we're going to see.
Little historical footnote is the fact that the call letters of the airport is JHW, after John H. Wright, the husband of Lucille Wright.
I didn't know that.
And John Wright was the best friends with a guy named Robert Jackson. So this is important stuff.
It is, people don't realize, I did a quote, Steve Cass had to correct me. I love quotes. I think to me, it's motivating. But it was a documentary about Antonin Scalia. And I would always trip over this quote, and I hope I get it right now that I'm on a stream or on an interview. Talking about the Supreme Court, we're not final. We're not infallible because we're final. No, we're not final because we're infallible. We're infallible because we're final. Basically saying we're not perfect. And I used that when I was talking about Chautauqua County. We weren't going to be perfect with COVID, but I was going to take notes as I did and listen to everybody else's problems and benefits and mistakes. And I was going to make sure if that happened in Chautauqua County, I was going to have all the notes to make sure it doesn't happen here. And I said, that was Antonin Scalia. And Steve Cass said, no, it wasn't. It was Robert H. Jackson.
Absolutely.
And what a great, that's something that motivates me. And to know that quote, that Antonin Scalia, one of the most revered Supreme Court justices we've had, likens that. It came from Robert H. Jackson, somebody that he revered. Again, what I love telling people, everyone went to law school. He practiced law, learned law, and took the bar, but never went to law school. And to make it to the Supreme Court, it's pretty amazing.
There's a coffee mug floating around here. Kristen McMahon, the president and CEO of the Jackson Center, is in the audience. So the challenge is for her to find that and give it to you. So you'll have it on your desk.
I'm excited. I really, talking about things, and this is just a great facility, when you talk about the history that was made. Speaking with Maureen this morning, today, it's, going to the Holocaust Museum. And there were some people that were waiting I was there with a group of students. Like, what are they doing, these kids? And I'm like, Robert H. Jackson was from our hometown, and their lives lit up. It's like, wow. Because he moved the world. And when you think of what happened, and it's amazing, and I guess not to bring in the bad, but, we haven't seen that in, 70 years Europe has been quiet, the last time that happened. And we're in a position now that, hopefully we don't ever see or have the need for the likes of Robert H. Jackson and what he's done as a prosecutor. But it's just stunning that, that'll go down in history, what he did, and just his legacy lives on, and he came from very humble beginnings right here in Chautauqua County.
Well, this is the sound bite that really might make it. Thank you. Just as a program note, sitting in your seat 2 weeks hence will be Leanne Hendrick. Leanne Hendrick, teacher at Chautauqua Lake School, who is taking a whole class of students, to the Holocaust Museum this weekend to expose them to that. So ironically, you've segued into the next program.
It'll be, and we were talking, it's moving. If you get a chance to go, you really have to go. You could spend a day there, and I still don't think you're going to see everything.
Yeah.
If you look at the perspective of, there's piles of shoes and luggage, that the last time that was held was in such a crazy time. You look in, there's one area, it looks like a smokestack. I think it replicates one of the stacks of Auschwitz. But it has pictures of people that were all lost. It's just unfathomable, but to go to that museum, I think I would tell anybody to go, because it's an amazing part of history. It's amazing that we could land all of that memorabilia here, in the United States, but it's just, I urge everybody, it's a part of history that really has to be understood.
And right now, there's probably no segue in this, PJ, but obviously much is going on as this is being taped in the Ukraine. I just had so I was talking on the phone with a Colonel Don Patton out of Minneapolis. I'm going out there, and his comment was 1939. How timely that I will be going out there to talk about Jackson, Nuremberg, and the whole thing, because we hope history is not repeating itself, but obviously, a lot is playing out literally as we speak. Now, the crazy question is gonna be this. You are a wrestler extraordinaire, senior wrestler on the international stage, and I'm sure you followed the Olympics, and I'm sure you followed, because as an individual sport, a lot going on this week with athletes who are Russian, and I don't know if it ever happened in your international wrestling competition, but if today somebody said, tomorrow you got the draw of a Russian to wrestle in Paris, would you?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. My wife would probably have a different opinion, but I would. You know, I think it's, and the reason I say that is this, you know, you're afforded certain times in your life to do things. You know, my choosing to leave teaching and become the county executive, and then, you know, people ask, you know, would you have done it? I would have done it still. I wouldn't have changed my mind. Knowing there was a pandemic, yeah, to me it's a challenge. How do you, you know, navigate that? But to compete, yeah, I think it's, you know, and I guess I have faith in, you know, we'll call it the sanctity of sport, but realizing that sport should transcend politics. If you look at, you know, Jesse Owens and you know, going over to compete in 1936 and the significance of that, you know, for us to travel there now. In fact, my brother, a year younger than my Irish twin, if you will, a year and 17 days, is leaving to go to Azerbaijan tomorrow on a sport cultural exchange. So really, I would do it in a heartbeat. I don't think I'd ever, wouldn't think twice about it. Just, and the hopes are that, you know, you're safe, and really that athletes are left out of it. But as you've seen, you know, there's athletes that are taking up arms, and it's, yeah, ironically, you know, my family's Ukrainian, so my great-grandfather came at the turn of the century to get out of, you know, the Ukraine. It wasn't even the Ukraine then. I don't know what the term of the country was, but to get out of the first Russian invasion of the communist, you know, regime in the 1900s. We know we have family back there, still near Lviv. This is the largest city near their village, so close to the Polish border. Some people are leaving, you know, but distant relatives have been in contact. So, you know, it's unique. But many things that they've said is they liken it to, you know, 1939, and you know, the Nazis were coming on one side and the Russians were coming from the other. And this is a group of people that have been doing this for thousands of years, if you will. But you're right, we hope history isn't repeating itself. But unfortunately, and I guess the one thing, and I think that's most important if you want it, the importance of realizing, you know, going back to the Holocaust, you know, museum, is that it's always been said, if you don't learn from history, you're bound to repeat it. Mm-hmm. I would hope we learned a lot, you know, from history, and we aren't bound to repeat it. But some people just have their own beliefs and their own, you know, ideologies politically. And
I know I had no clue that you were part Ukrainian. You watch the news, does it pull at you a little bit different than might otherwise?
you know, I guess this, you know, growing up, I could never tell anybody, you know, what my background was, my nationalities. I could talk about, well, in the 1970s, growing up, I was German. You know, my dad's family was Bavarian. Well, okay, a couple years after World War II, hopefully people don't remember, but, you know, my grandmother's was Croatian. There was no Croatia. When you told people you were Croatian in, you know, the 70s and 80s, okay, whatever that is, you know, it was Yugoslavia. It emerged, so we could talk about it. The same with the Ukraine and Czech and Russian. It was the makeup of my mom's side of the family. Again, it was Eastern Bloc. You really didn't talk about that, you know. You're proud of it, yeah. And I guess the other side of it is I'm proud of the heritage. I just, you go online and everybody has, you know, the Ukraine and the flag, which is great to support. But does it tug at me? Yeah, you wonder. I was just sent a picture of my great-great-grandfather's, you know, grave that's over there. So, you know, there's, traditions are there. You know, like we said in our family, we continue them, you know. But does it tug at you? Yeah, in a sense it does, but in a sense that, you know, I've never been there, so I'm not one that's going to jump on the bandwagon and, you know,
You're not going to enlist tomorrow?
Well, I'm 51, I don't think, I don't, you know what? Would I enlist? You know, if yeah, I probably would if something were to happen. I don't think I would ever run away from a fight. I definitely would run toward it.
I don't think you'd ever run away.
But I mean, it's, you know, when you look at something like that, is what would my experiences bring to the table when it came to something like that? You know, I could tell you if I were in that position, let's say we didn't emigrate here and I was there, without a doubt, I'd be fighting, you know, to come back. And it's just, it's so, it's crazy when you think about, you know, why it's being done. It's just one person's will. This is what I want. What do you want? You want to take over a country? Why? It makes no sense. I mean, when you look at the atrocities, I mean, it was caught on tape. You know, there was a tank, a car driving, and a tank crushes the car. And it was caught on camera. What? Explain that. So what did that tank driver, what problem did he have with that guy? Oh, he wanted to leave, so you run him over? And I guess we in the United States don't understand that because we've never been challenged like that. We've never been invaded. So it's hard for us to understand what those people go through. But it's you know, something you think about, you know, and you hope that my family's far enough away that they don't get caught up in it. But, you know, you look at guys like, you know, I think it's Klitschko, who was a, you know, world boxing champion, has taken up arms. Mm-hmm. She Miss Universe, you know, from the Ukraine, has taken, I mean, it says a lot that these people could go anywhere, do anything, and they chose to go back and fight. So it says a lot about their passion and their desire to keep things where they are.
You're a Hall of Famer, you're a wrestling Hall of Famer, and a lot going on with institutions just no longer permitting competitions with the Russian Federation and so on. And then you got the impact of the athletes. You know, Russia can't compete in the Olympics, but they let the athletes compete under some name, a club, if you will. Is there a distinction without a difference there?
Yeah, you know, they got caught. Let's face it. You know, was it something we didn't know? You know, I'll tell you, the person you probably want to have in the seat is my brother. You know, he could tell you when you look at the sport of wrestling. The sport of wrestling has come under fire for years, and the person who kind of threw them under was Sergei Bubka, the Russian pole vaulter, because he said when wrestlers have a problem, they just sweep it under the carpet. You don't penalize them. You don't deal with it. You don't enforce any sanctions. You just whatever. It's just wrestling. We'll go on. So very critical. But you know. Again, when you listen, there's a documentary about the Russian doping and how it was a state-run organization. And they're like, you know, they're trying to say, oh, you're criticizing us. We're being punished unjustly. Come on, you broke the rules, and you broke them for decades. And I guess if there's any saving grace, if you look at Americans, you know, take away, you know, the Lance Armstrongs or whatever. You look at Americans, you look at any other country, we were competitive and we didn't do what you did. You know, I'd love to meet the man personally, because he left wrestling, got into politics. Alexander Karelin, undefeated for many, many years, 3-time Olympic gold medals, beaten by Rulon Gardner, the big, overweight, fat farmer, if you will. Beat him. And this guy was he was the experiment, is what he was called. 6'8", 286 pounds of pure muscle. Come on, you know, you look at it, being an athlete, you know what it takes to get that big, and that, yes, genetically he could say nobody trained like he did, but there's a lot of other things here. And I guess when you look at what the Russians, they finally got caught, you know, should they be banned? Maybe, maybe not, but, you know, I guess you have to, you know, look at what they've done with the likes of Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa. You might have a world record, but there needs to be an asterisk, you know, around it saying enhanced or, you know, chemically induced, however you want to look at it. But it's sad that, you know, but unfortunately or fortunately, they were found guilty of something we all knew they were doing. But it's interesting the way they're trying to spin it now. It really wasn't us. We didn't. You knew exactly what you were doing. But the sad, really, I wish I knew the name of that documentary, because it's interesting, because this person, you know, went in disguise and basically knew he may not return, he may not live because of what he did in outing the Russian Federation. Yeah, so it's scary.
You know, I think we billed this evening as interview with PJ Wendel, County Executive on the state of the county. I think we touched a little bit on this, but I've always enjoyed kind of getting behind the curtain and talking about COVID and other things that are of note. Before we draw closure to this more than hour-long conversation, is there something that you hoped that I'd get to that I didn't?
Well, you know, if there's one thing, I guess if we look at the question of the state of the county, where are we? We're in a great spot. Are we going to be better? Can we be better? Certainly. But did I expect to be in this position when COVID first started? No, and I was scared like everybody else because again, you know, COVID's going to hit. What'd you do to the economy? What happened? You know, Wendell, this is your, you know, why didn't you make adjustments? But again, relying on that team, you know, somebody brought it to my attention. We better look at the budget. Okay, let's look at the budget. You know, we saved $4.5 million by putting people on, offering a furlough. I shouldn't say putting them on, offering a furlough. And ironically, that $4.5 million savings spun around and was an addition to last year's fund balance. This year, again, we put in 8.2, 8.6, depending on where the numbers fall. It's $8.2 million. We just got the number today. But ironically, there's a department that has an outstanding reimbursement of $1.6 million. So you're looking at $10 million putting back into our fund balance. In the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of the economy being where it was, I think it's pretty good. But that's not me. That's our collective. That's the 127,639 residents of Chautauqua County. They've all helped, you know, to make that possible. Are we in a good place? Yeah. Our financial management plan, adopted in 2004, I believe it was, requires or asks us, or we're going to follow a fund balance between 5 and 15% of our overall budget. We're at 10%. We weren't there 2 years ago. Not all me, obviously, but it's nice to know that under my administration, you know, we have done the right things to put that money there. I believe we've made, you know, have a very sound budget, but, you know, I've always been that, okay, that's over, let's move on to the next year. And, you know, you're only going to be as good as your last, you know, event. So, you know, we're looking at the 2023 budget. You know, we're in March of, you know, 2020 or 2022, but we're already talking about the next year. But it's really how this job is. You're always looking in the future, you know, always waiting to see what's behind the door, you know, what could pop out and surprise you. But I'm very confident in where we are. I'm really excited to be here as a leader of this county. I'm excited to where we were, or where we are, where we're going. I think is the most important part. But, you know, getting back to the one thing, you didn't catch me on that statement I made earlier. So really excited to be part of the 10, I call it. Only 10 county executives in county history. One person to have the dubious distinction being there 2 different times. That's Steve Abdallah. My team went out and they found state of the county addresses, 1985.
All right.
Population decline, infrastructure, and bringing businesses and economy. So some 30-some years later, we're still talking the same things. So it's interesting. You know, Jack Lenzer, great. There is something that I'll let the cat out of the bag. I'm going to bring a certificate. In 1987, when I qualified to go to states, we were invited to the county legislature, and I got a certificate. It looks like a high school diploma, maroon and gold, embossed. And my mom had it in a keepsake box, if you will. And I looked at it like, the office of the county executive, Jack Lenzer. I'm like, what was this? And it was a certificate that he gave me that in 1988. So I definitely want to get a picture with Jack and that some 30-some years later, here we are. Things come full circle.
Sure.
You just never know. But I think that's, but if you look at it, we're still talking the same things: population decline, economy, businesses growing this great county. Just excited. You know, I hope that there's something, you know, I looked at some of the questions they want to ask. And for me, it's you know, what are some of your biggest accomplishments? COVID. To me, it's like, you know, it's like throwing up that underhand pitch, you know, to a home run hitter. It's really, you know, right now, but I think the thing that I look at now is how do I define myself? COVID is over, in a sense. You can't hang your hat on that all the time. Sure. So now I have to find a new way to leave my mark on the county and to, you know, whether it's a business, a development, a situation, we're changing things, we're moving forward. But I think that's the one thing that motivates me is how will I be remembered? Will I be one of the 10 that was here, or will there be some legacy? But, yeah, it's a challenge. I'm excited for it. And,
Well, the nice thing, PJ, we at the Turner Winter Series are judged by the last interview we had, and will be judged very well. And so, thank you for spending the time and dealing with our myriad of questions here tonight. Thank you.
well, thank you. I said I'm excited. It's always great to talk with you, but the way you ask questions, it's always good. I'm excited.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.